In today's episode, we teach you how to play, and more importantly, how to score Iwari, an abstract-like Eurogame.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
Thanks for sticking around. I'm Carlos.
I'm Patrick.
And Patrick will be teaching me and you today how to play Iwari. So, Patrick, how do we set up?
So first thing what we're going to do, we're going to pick a side of the board. There's two different sides to the board. They don't affect gameplay in any way. The only difference is that they're just kind of different. Then you'll set up the scoreboard wherever you would like, this side, that side, wherever you would like it. There's two different sides to the scoreboard as well. One here is just shows for the base game, and then on the other side, they have places that you're going to place feats if you want to play with those. I suggest always talking with your game group before you do any of that or before you decide to play with those. They're just bonuses that you're going to be able to play with if you want to in kind of an advanced game.
This is the side that makes it more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then also what you're going to do, since we're setting up for a two-player game, we're actually going to set out 3 sets of player tokens. So the way it's going to work is that me and Carlos are going to play, but also there will be a third ghost player that we both control, kind of like if you play a 2-player game of 7 Wonders. But you're controlling it, and they also get to score points as well. Next thing you're going to do is deal out two sets of cards, so 3 each for everybody. Okay. And then after that, you will set the deck down, and you will create a display of 4 cards. There are also advanced rules where after you've gotten through a couple of games, they're in the rule book as well, that allow you to set up the display first, and then both players, or up to 5 players, they get to draft from the display and or the deck. So that makes it a super fun and interesting, different game. Yeah, and that's the setup. We're going to talk about what the board looks like and what the symbols mean on each space.
All right.
So let's take it for example, this orange desert space right here. This symbol stands for desert, and this is where we would put a totem piece, which is like this. Red totem piece, and this is one of the many ways that you score points in Iwari.
So this is what do we call this?
That's a desert.
That's the color is the desert.
The color is the
symbol
desert.
Means desert.
Mm-hmm.
What is it a region? Is it an area? What do we call it?
It's a territory.
Territory. So the big thing is a territory. Mm-hmm. And then these are?
Those are the spots where you'll place your tents.
And we call these?
It's a smaller circle. It's a smaller circle.
That's it. Okay.
So let's for layman's terms, let's call it a tent spot.
We're going to call these tent spots, and these are territories. Territories are the bigger area that have multiple tent spots. And then there's a spot for the totem, the larger circles.
To explain, the red spot or the red territory will be tundra. The blue territory will be glaciers. The yellow territory will be coasts, and the green territory will be forests. So depending on the number of players, you're going to reference the rulebook for a table telling you how many mountain tokens you're going to place on the board. These mountain tokens divide certain territories to tighten up the board depending on how many players you have. So here, for a 3-player game, we would place a token on a 1 mountain peak, a token on a 2 mountain peak, and a token on a 3 mountain peak. We would leave the 4 mountain peaks alone. So starting with the first player and going in clockwise order, you're going to do one of 2 things. You're either going to play up to 3 cards to place tents or totems in territories, or you're going to discard 1 card into your personal discard pile and take a card either from the display or the draw deck into your hand. So whenever the draw deck is exhausted for the first time, we're going to score for the first time in the game, and only tents. So that means we're going to score based off of who has the majority in each territory by tents.
Okay.
And then once it's exhausted the second time, we're going to score tents, totems, and settlements. And we'll learn more about that later on in the game. On your turn, you're going to play up to 3 cards.
Okay.
You're going to place either tents or totems on the board, and basically what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to match up the symbol of the card. So see, here we have a desert card here. Here's a desert card, and you have that orange symbol right there, and you're going to match it up to the territory that it corresponds with, one of the 2 desert territories here. So I would place a tent. After placing pieces, you're going to discard these cards and you're going to draw up new cards from the display and or the draw deck. And then you will not replenish the display until after your turn, like so. So when placing pieces on the board, players have got to follow these specific rules. So 1, you get to play one piece for each biome card. So for this red card, I only get to place 1 tent in that territory. When you do play cards, you can only place pieces into one single territory. So say I placed this blue card right here, I can only play into that blue biome right there. So here we have this green forest unexplored territory. To go into an unexplored territory, you're only allowed to place 1 tent there. You cannot place any totems or more than 1 tent. So I would play this green card with the green symbol, and then I would place a tent right there.
Can you place it in any of the spots in that territory, or does it have to be on the perimeter?
It can be in any empty space in that territory.
Okay. Does not have to be connected to something of yours?
No.
Nice.
No. So there's 2 states that a territory can be in: explored and unexplored. Inside an explored territory, you can place as many tents or totems as you want in 1 turn. In an unexplored territory, you are only allowed to place 1 tent. So usually, the normal cost for playing into 1 territory would be 1 card of that territory's color. But if you have, since you have 2 other cards in your hand, you're also able to play a second one. If you have 2 cards of the same color, that will equal 1 wild. So in this case, these 2 yellows equal this 1 orange, and I'm able to place 2 tents into that territory. So the rule book has this rule where it's called the 3-2-1 golden rule. You are able to play up to 3 cards to place up to 2 pieces into 1 territory. So 3, 2, 1.
And pieces are?
Pieces are made up of tents and or totems.
And to place a piece, I need to play a biome card that matches the symbol of the place I'm going to. Mm-hmm. Or I can spend 2 biome cards that have the matching symbol and use it as a wild for any biome that I'm moving into, any territory I'm moving into.
Okay, we're going to go over some special placement rules. For tents, tents must always be placed in small tent spaces on territories. No more than 1 tent may occupy a tent space. And then once all the tent spaces are taken up in a territory, no more tents may be placed in that territory. And now we're going to go over special placement for totems. A totem must be placed into a totem space. A totem space may contain multiple totems. So now we're going to go over a fundamental rule regarding totem placement. So for totem placement, you're never going to be allowed to place more totems than there are a tent majority in the territory. For example, this desert territory has a majority of 2 tents because both players have two of their tents in that territory. So therefore, only 2 totems are allowed to be placed in that territory to a maximum.
So if this is a situation on the board now, how many totems can be placed in that space?
The same thing, only 2 totems will be allowed into that territory because the majority player still only has 2 tents in that territory. Any player may place a totem piece in that territory even if they don't have tents there. A single player can have multiple totems on 1 single totem space. So after I've played my hand and I've placed my tents, I'm going to go back over to the display here or the deck to draw back up to 3 cards. I can do so in any order from the display or the deck. So I'll take these 2 and notice how I haven't refilled this display case right here. You do not refill the display until you've drawn all your cards. So after this deck is exhausted for the first time, we're going to do our first round of scoring. So what will happen is everyone will turn in their individual discard piles and we'll reshuffle a new draw deck.
Okay.
After that, we're going to score territories by tents and tents only, no totems or settlements.
All right.
And how that's done is like so. So let's focus on this orange territory right here. So we see that blue has a majority of tents here. That means they are going to score for every tent in that territory. So they will score 4 points if you put 4 points on the board there. So we're going to rank each territory individually. We're going to count them separately, and tied players score full points for each level of rank. For the first rank, like here with the blue in this
Whoever has the highest majority in that area.
Yes, they have the desert majority right here.
Because they have 2 tents. No one else has 2 tents in that region.
That's correct.
That territory.
So they're going to score 4 points for that territory.
Because the player with the highest majority is going to score 1 point for each tent in the territory of all colors. That's everybody's tents. This is the part that's tough for me.
Yeah.
Everybody's tents will score the player with the most majority in that territory 1 point.
Yeah.
All right.
And then we'll move on to second rank. So we have green and red tied here, so they're going to share the points that they get. Okay. They will get as many points as the first player has.
So they're going to score 1 point for each tent belonging to the first player in that territory.
So they're going to score 2 points each.
So on this board, I would say blue is going to score 4 points because they have 1 point for every tent in the territory. And then we only have second place there, which is shared between green and red. They're going to score the full amount, which is equal to 1 point for each tent belonging to the first player. The blue has 2 tents in there, so each of these players will receive 2 points.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then move on.
Let's do another example on the next territory.
In this tundra territory, we see that once again, blue has the tent majority by having 2 tents, so they would score 3 points because of the red tent that's also there.
They're going to score 1 point for each tent in the territory of all colors because they're the first in majority.
That's correct.
So 1, 2, 3 for blue.
And then 2 for red.
Because the second will always score 1 point for each tent belonging to the first player. First player being blue, who has 2.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then one more example, in this green territory, we see that red has the most tents. So they're going to score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points for each tent in that territory.
Because red is first, and they score 1 point for each tent in that territory of all colors.
Yes, sir.
So they're at 4, they're going to be at 9 points.
And then green and blue, since they both have the same number of tents, they're going to share the second majority in that, and they will score 1 point for each tent of the majority in that territory.
Which is the red player. He has 3, so both green and blue will receive 3 points. So folks, and the tough part for that is that, to me, was one of the most difficult concepts to grasp in this game is the scoring. So we're going to really focus in on that a bit, especially on the next half, because right now this is the first half journey, the half journey.
Yep.
We're halfway through our journey. We're doing our scoring for the first time. We're only scoring tents, and we're not scoring any totems or what they call settlements, which we'll talk about when we score the second half.
Yep. And then after we're done scoring tents for the first time, we're going to proceed with the person who has the next turn.
We just completed scoring for the first half. Who starts us off on the second half?
The next person. Like whoever would have been next if the deck didn't run out, that person would go.
Okay, so if you, Patrick, drew the last card from the deck, that triggered the half game scoring, and I was the player to your left, I would be the next one to go.
That's correct.
All right. Now in the second half, the scoring is going to be different because this final half of the game, we're going to focus on scoring not just like we did for the first half, which is tents. We're also going to score totem majority, and we're going to score a new concept called settlements. So what's a settlement?
A settlement is any 4 tents strung together by these black lines.
4 or more?
4 or more. So we have here, as an example, these 4 blue tents right here, actually 6. Settlements are able to cross territories as so. And then you would gain 1 point for each tent in that territory or in that settlement.
So, and this is important for playing the second half of the game because now your strategy changes. So now you're not just going for tent majority, you're going to focus on tent majority, building totem majority, and also how you place your tents will impact settlement bonus scoring.
That's correct. End of journey scoring occurs when the deck runs out for a second time, or someone has run out of all their tents to place. At that point, the round would continue until everyone has an equal amount of turns from the beginning of the game, and then we would score tents, totems, and settlements in that order. So at the end of the journey, we're going to score the tents again. So for this territory right here in the blue, blue has the most tents here, so they're going to score 1 point for each tent in that territory. So
How
they'll
many,
score
how many tents?
4
Oh,
points.
I couldn't see that tent behind there.
Yes.
Okay, so,
There's a tent right here.
so we rank the majority,
We rank the majority.
starting with blue having the majority. So they're first because they have 2 tents. The green and the red player both are second because they have an equal number of tents.
That's correct.
Less than blue. And just like in the first half scoring, the first player with highest majority is going to score 1 point for
each.
every tent in
every
there
tent,
of
yeah.
all colors, totaling 4 points.
So up to 14.
So now he's at 14.
Red will score for the first majority, which is blue, and they have 2 tents there, so they will score 2 points.
So
then
red and green
will score the same.
are
Yes.
scoring the same because they both share majority.
Exactly.
The second place majority. They score 2 points each.
The game provides you with these nice little tent tokens to help you know which territories you've already scored for the end game scoring. So we'll move on to this tundra territory right here, the red territory. So here we see that green has the first majority, blue has the second majority. So therefore green is going to score 1 point for each tent in that territory for a total of 4 points. Blue will score 3 points because they're scoring based off of the first majority. Green has 3 tents, so blue will score 3 points.
All right, so blue gets 3, putting them at 17, and 4 for green puts green at 11.
So we'll move on to this forest territory right here, the green territory. We'll see that red has a majority because they have 3 tents and there's only 5 spaces in the territory. Blue and green will share the second majority because they both have 1 tent in the remaining spaces in the territory. So that for that, since red has the first majority, they will score 5 points for the total number of tents in that territory. Green and blue will share 3 points. They'll get 3 points each because they both share the second majority.
The second majority will score a number of points equal to the number of tents in the first majority.
Exactly.
So both green and blue will score 3 points. All right.
And then here in this desert territory, the orange territory, we will see that blue has the first majority because they have 2 tents in that territory, and then red and green will share the second majority because they each have 1 tent in the remaining tent spots. So blue will score 1 point for each tent in that territory for a total of 4 points, and then red and green will score a total of 2 points for each blue tent that's there.
1 for each blue tent, totaling 2 points for each of those players because they are sharing the second majority.
So those are our tent scoring examples for the end of journey scoring. Now we'll move on to totems. So the way totems are scored is that we will take this marker right here that the game provides. We will cover up each of these little numbers that you see connecting each territory.
Each of these numbers is called a connection. So each connection is going to score. And you said we start with the lowest number first.
We do. The rule book does say to start with the lowest number first. Totems are scored by the connections between territories and not the totems themselves. So for the example, we're going to go start here at number 7. Usually you would start in numerical order by the connections. So the way that totem scoring works is that it's going to be based off of who has majority in each territory based on that connection. So we're going to work on this glacier territory and tundra territory first, and this connection number 7. So for this totem right here, we see that each player, blue, red, and green, have 1 totem in the tower.
So they're sharing majority. They all have majority in that territory.
And then in this territory, the tundra territory, we see that red, green, red. So red clearly has majority there. So for this connection, you're going to find that red shares the majority between this connection, and they will score the points. The way the points are scored is that the red will get 1 point for each totem piece in each spot. So right here, red will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points.
Because we're not scoring the totems, we're scoring the connection, and the connection is the 2 territories. For a player to score that connection, they have to have majority in both territories. The red player shares majority for the blue territory and has majority in the red territory, thus red is going to score the points.
Now you saw us put mountain tokens here earlier in the setup. These mountain tokens block connections between 2 territories. So this glacier territory and forest territory, the totems would not score anything because they're not technically connected
This connection is covered up by the mountain range.
Exactly. The connection will be covered up by the mountain range.
All right.
So we'll move on to this 13 connection here. You'll notice that some of the connections are kind of a little bit wonky down here. So it'll be like next here when it could have easily been up here. But either way, that's
Just be careful on looking at the connection to make sure you're scoring the correct connected territory.
So to score connection 13, we will see that red, green, and blue are all sharing this space, and therefore all of them have majority. We see in the desert space that blue has 2 totems there, and therefore they have majority. So the shared connection would be blue. They would gain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points.
So blue would get 5 because they have majority in both of those connected territories.
That's correct. And then we'll move on to connection 14, where we see that red has majority in the tundra section, and then blue has majority in the desert section. Therefore, no points would be awarded to any player.
Because no player has majority of totems
in both
connected territories.
That's correct.
All right, so that's how totem scoring works.
That's how totem scoring
works. And the last thing we score is?
Settlements. A settlement is 4 tents in a row connected by these pathways between tent spaces. So here, blue has a settlement, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. They will gain 1 point for each tent in that settlement, so blue will gain 4 points. As I can see, there are no other settlements in our example, so therefore...
Because this line here of 3 red tents, or 2 red tents, and then is blocked by this green, which prevents him from connecting to that. And also, we need to make a point, because Patrick brought it up earlier, the mountains will prevent scoring of the connection for totem scoring, but the mountains will not block scoring for the purposes of settlements.
That's correct.
It's only blocking the connection for totem scoring. So you can run your path in between a mountain range, you just won't get totem scoring.
And still score a settlement.
All right. And any more scoring after that?
That would be the end of the scoring and the end of the game.
What about tiebreakers?
So in the event of the tie, the player with the most unused pieces is going to be the winner of the game.
Well, that's how you score the final journey, the end of the journey in Iwari.
Yes. I will say I do really love this game. My 10-year-old daughter loves this game. She fell in love with it the second she played it. I think it's a great abstract game for families, because it's really easy to play, but it's difficult to master. But, like my family, especially my wife, daughter, and mother-in-law, they love the brain challenge of trying to figure out what's the best move on their turn and everything like that. It's just a wonderful, simple game. And I think it's a great game to add to your collection if you're looking for a good family game to play.
Yeah, but what I found is it was not as simple to learn as I initially thought. Because there's some things that this game does counterintuitively that I have to think about. It kind of takes me outside of the game. So Patrick coming here to teach me again on how to play this has been great. Now, running through the scoring really does matter because that's going to dictate your strategy in the game. So I really hope that we were able to show you how to score in the end of the first half, as well as how to score at the end of the journey, so you can build a better strategy for your gameplay throughout. Because in the first half, you don't score any totems and you don't score settlement, so you really only score tent majority. It's the second half when you're going to score your tent majority and your totem connections and your settlements. So I hope that helps you understand the scoring. If you see something that we got wrong, please put it in the comments. If you have any questions, put it down low in the comments. But that was how to play and how to score Iwari. I'm Carlos.
I'm Patrick.
And we're the Beans and Dice Podcast, a podcast about
How we game.
Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.